I really am glad you're here today. I see some faces that I know and love, and some new faces and new names too. So welcome, and I'm glad you're here today with us. To get us started, let me just tell you first some things that I want to do today. Last week we talked about, looked at some of the things from theory in terms of sociocultural theory, and I'm going to revisit one or two things in there. But today I want you to talk, and we'll use some structure for it. But two ways I'm going to ask you to share and talk today. One is I'm going to ask you to go into breakout rooms, and in the breakout rooms we're going to share. I'll give you the way to do it in a few minutes. But I want you to share either your cluster write that you may have done last week, or the process about doing it, or thinking about it this week if you did do it. And if you're new this week, when you go into the breakout room, I ask that somebody will catch them up on what we did last week and just share about it. That's one thing I want to do. And then the other thing I want to do is just give us some time to reflect outward. We've been reflecting inward. That's what we did last week. Now we want to look at our world around us and our communities that we interact with, where we live, and how some of the things that we know more about ourselves and are aware about the world around us, how does that fit? And we're still going to keep the structure of theory. So that's my plan. That's not a very good objective. Laura, I hope you're not critiquing me today on lesson design. I'm teaching a huge class. I know. I'm teaching lesson design this semester, and that's all I'm thinking about is how to write an objective. So I didn't do a very good job there. But to get us started, I would like to do the collective breaths with us again as a group. And then I learned really easily that Sunday school gets cut off really fast because of Zoom. So something that I was going to read to y'all last week as a closure, I'm going to read to you today as an opening, so that if we get cut off this time, you've already heard these words. So the words I'm going to read to you, it comes from, I didn't catch the person's name. I was in an interfaith ministry or group in March, and just as we were going into quarantine. And these words were really important as a prayer. So I'm going to read those to you after we do the collective breaths. So are you with me? Give me thumbs up, say hi, say yes, say something.
Hi from me.
Great. And right now, everybody's good. I see you, I see your faces, I see people coming in, so thank you. So the first thing you want to do is to just kind of get in a comfortable seated position. Maybe sit up a little straighter, to let breath come into your heart area. And then I like to put my hands over my heart. If you want to do that, you can do this. And then just take a few breaths. Quiet. I don't know if you can see, but for some reason I swing in my chair. It feels good. So now let's take 3 collective breaths as a group, as a community together. So take a deep breath and let it out. Remember that sigh, make that sigh noise. It makes you feel better. Take another deep breath and let it out. Nice deep sigh. I don't hear any sighs. This last one, I want to hear some really good sighs. Ready? Take a deep breath. And for a few minutes, you can keep your eyes open or closed, hands over your heart if you like. And let me read these words to us as a group as we come into our collective space. Speak the language of the unheard. Write the racial narrative. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. We all breathe the same air, one vast holy communion of breath. Respire, conspire, inspire. Breathe in peace. Breathe in love. All right. So thank you so much for doing that with me. And as we come in together as a group, I think it brings us into that collective group. And coming into Zoom is much like coming into the Sunday school class where you're rushing to get that one more cup of coffee. You find somebody you want to talk to, you're trying to make the Zoom work, and it kind of creates that little bit of chaos in our world. And so as we do this, we settle. And we settle as a group. So a couple of things I wanted to do is talk about equitable sharing one more time. We did a really good job. I loved how y'all shared and gave your ideas. We're thinking of ways that we make sure all voices are heard, that people who sometimes are shy or quiet may not feel comfortable sharing. And just a couple of pieces of information about this. In different cultures, some cultures are taught to speak out and say what they need to say in groups, and some are taught to not speak out, to be quiet. So a really good example is white dominant culture. We as a group of coming from the white dominant culture, European American, however you want to call yourself, we have been taught that we have value to say and people want to hear what we have to say. And so males will speak out first, white males, and white females will speak out next. In other cultures, for example, the Latinx culture, the girls are taught to be very quiet, not to ask questions and not to bring attention to themselves. Boys too, to an extent, but they talk out more than girls. So in my classes, when I have males in the class, Latino males, they will always speak out first. And the girls will hold back. Some are told to hold back more from culture and others from the DACA illegal immigrant issues of not bringing attention to themselves. Other cultural groups may have different things that they do. So we as a white culture often take up the space. And we believe, I was taught this. I remember in Sunday school in Levelland, Texas, being told to, I always talked out in Sunday school because I thought I had important things to say. And I think I've carried that through my whole entire life. So how we hold our space is really important to share. So today I'm going to do 4 words. I'm going to give you 4 words. I didn't write much down today. So the 4 words in equitable sharing are trust, respect, optimism, and intentionality. So as I say those 4 words, trust and respect, those two go together. I think if I trust you, I respect you. If I respect you, if you respect me, you trust me. Optimism, to me, that's the example of a teacher who has just had the worst day ever. Kids have bit her, spit on her, peed on her, done all kinds of things, and she gets up the next day and goes to work because she's excited about being at school. That's the best example of optimism I can come up with. And then intentionality. What I'm doing right now is intentionally creating a safe space for us to share. So those 4 words, just answer out, come off your mute and talk out about what one of those words is important to you. Which one is important to you? Trust.
Repeat the word, please.
Yes, I'm sorry I don't have them written.
That's
trust,
all.
respect, optimism, intentionality.
Thank you.
Which one's important to you? Paul, Joyce, y'all go. As they come off mute.
Trust. Go ahead.
Thank you, Laura.
Mine is respect.
Respect, good. Another word. What's important to you out of those four?
Trust.
Trust. Another word. What's important to you out of those words?
I'll come back and say respect.
Respect.
I think that's the basis for all of the others.
I'm inclined to believe that. Trust and respect.
Good. Trust. One more share.
Trust. I'm with trust also. Same reason.
So one of the things we want to think about on those words is how we can take them out with us as we move out into our world with us today. So did you guys bring your cluster right that you wrote and we worked on last week, that piece about naming who you are by looking at different ways of identifying yourself? Do you have something with you? Yes?
Yes.
Yay. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to set it up. Oh, my skills are getting really, hang on, I need to do breakout. So what we're going to do is I want you to go into the breakout rooms, introduce yourselves if you don't know somebody in the group, and then just take 2 minutes each. That'll be about 5, that's 10 minutes. Take 1 minute each and just kind of share a little bit about your cluster right, what you thought about it, what came up for you, anything you want to share around the cluster right. Does that make sense? Good? So thank you for doing that. I'm going to share my screen now, and I hope I do it right this time. I didn't do it right last time. Let's see if this works. So hopefully you're seeing a PowerPoint with just one screen. Thank you. I'm just kind of going back to the same PowerPoint that we worked on last week. And I just want to go to just have a little bit of talk again about some of the theory. Placing things into theory, I think, is so important. It gives you a structure. So we've been looking at the transformative theory based on Paulo Freire, and he talks about reflective practice, which we are doing here, and the changing process, which we want to do. I think we're all here wanting to see change. We know we're going to have change. And so, and this is what you just finished doing, is looking at your own lives through these elements, through these there's several things we call them cultural markers, but also the way they intersect is really important because nothing is just separate and independent. But the two I want to talk about today is looking at power and privilege and how we use that with language. So we've had a lot of talk since, well, it's really come up, I don't know if you want to say the quarantine or the protests, but we've had some really good conversations in lots of different spaces about power. And we call it white power and privilege. We call it white privilege. The reason why we're calling it white privilege is we live in it. One of the things that Freire talks about is our living as a dominant culture. I can see most of us here probably identify with the dominant culture in one way or another, and that we have lived within this. Laura, can I share what you just said, just to give you your example? Is that okay? So Laura was describing her experiences, and I think she's told us this before in several settings, but she grew up first going to a school that was African-American Black with Black teachers, and she thought that's the way the world was. And then she moved to Tennessee, where she lived more in a middle-class white culture where everybody was white. So her dominant culture for her originally was more of Black, being in schools with the teachers of power. The teachers made the rules, and they were the dominant culture. And then she changed her culture to more white. And so that's an example of the power and privilege that it doesn't have to be white privilege. It comes from more of which culture is dominant, which one makes the rules, which one makes the policy, which one makes the laws. We are living in white, in a white dominant culture. So that's why we see white privilege. There's other places in the world that have privilege and power, and from people who are of other color, ethnicity, background, different kinds of things. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was a description by Robin DiAngelo in White Fragility. She talks about how, there we go. I was about to say I didn't mark it. She talks about what white fragility is. As we start looking at our backgrounds, and we have this kind of a sense of, I don't have white privilege. You've heard that said many, many times in different places, in different settings. That also means our world is becoming unstable. We're used to a world that the status quo is the way we know it, the way it is and the way it was, and it should be that way from now on. And so that's our status quo. And when people start saying, I don't have white privilege, or that's not right, I've been oppressed, then that's when they're experiencing the disequilibrium of their status quo. And she says, though white fragility is triggered by discomfort and anxiety, it is born of superiority and entitlement. White fragility is not weakness per se. In fact, it is a powerful means of white racial control and the protection of white advantage. So that's where I want to bring out a conversation today. And I'd like to hear some thoughts from you. And please note, please be honest. Please say things that you're really feeling, because this is a safe place to do that. And then if you say something that somebody else wants to counter or say, we can do that here. So this is tough conversation, but what does privilege and power mean to you? Is it something that you have seen in your life in different ways, like Laura described, in different ways she saw it? Or is it something that this is your first time to see it as a privilege or a power? What are some things that you think about? You know, I'm going to call on you. Go, Jim.
Yeah, Laura, I was thinking about an experience just a few years ago in our church in Cambridge when, no, I'm sorry, it was in our co-op. And there was some information sheets passed around. And one of them was a kind of pinkish, orangish, pinkish color. And when I was trying to identify that piece of paper, I called it flesh colored.
Okay.
And I got called on that by other people in the group. And I was really embarrassed that I wasn't more aware of the presumption that I made.
More pillow or no? You okay,
I'm
Laila?
okay like this, yeah.
So, okay, so I think, yes, that's one of the things we're so common to use, vocabulary. I'm sorry, somebody's talking in the background somewhere. I'm not sure where it is. And it's, I think that, yeah, you might have been embarrassed, but I think that's good that it became awareness for you. Somebody else with some examples of that.
Well, this is Bill. Can you hear me?
Yes, Bill, we grow.
Fine.
Oh.
This is partly white privilege, partly other. But anyway, over the last 20 years, one of the things I worked on in drug policy has been trying to provide legally syringes for injecting drug users. And I won't go into the advantages, but they're proven. And in any case, getting those available for people stirs up all sorts of things. And a lot of it has to do not only with drug use, but also with white privilege. But where it was pointed out to me in terms of class privilege was, for many years, I injected myself with sterile syringes for allergies, which I was able to go to the local Eckerd's then and just buy 100 at a time, just walk up and get them. And one Saturday, I'd been working out in the yard and the Eckerd's were just 3 blocks away. I walked over to get it. I had a lot of trouble getting those just because of the way I was dressed. And finally, I could show them my RICE card and all of that and explain why and say, I've done this here before. But just, it was showing that coming in, looking different, having the right credentials enabled me to do something that a person, particularly a person of color coming in there, would have had a lot more trouble doing. And that's pretty well stuck with me.
Yeah, and that really creates that awareness that you had something that others don't have, to be able to walk in like that and do that.
Right, exactly.
So one of the things I always use as an example is I ask my students, I'll ask you, when you go into Macy's department store or Dillard's in the mall, which you may not have done in quite a while, but I'm sure you've done it. And you might have on a jacket that it's really not cold outside, but you happen to have your jacket on. Do you have somebody follow you to ask you if you need help? Do you have somebody who asks you if you need help or if you're looking for anything special and then leave you alone? Or do they continue following you?
Well, no, I'm not followed. But you may have seen in the paper this week or seen on television the African-American man a doctor who wears scrubs to go into stores and other kinds of things, or when stopped by police, he rigged the scrubs because it's a badge of a doctor, makes it much easier for him to move through the world than it didn't.
So my students always, the answer, y'all look pretty much like you're saying, no, I don't have that problem. I know, yeah. And it's an easy thing to do. My students, all my Latinx and my African-American students all describe instances of being followed, not being left alone, not being able just to shop and look. Somebody is constantly asking them if they need help. And then once they try to dismiss them so they can shop, they're followed. That's a difference in white privilege. And what that is exactly what Bill is talking about in terms of because of the way you look. And the first thing they see when they see you, nonverbal communication is what leads first in any kind of communication, and white skin, and then class is coming through. And so, oh, you are white, you have money, so I can let you shop on your own, even if you have a big heavy coat on. But somebody of color who may not look so put together will be followed because they might shoplift. And then we can just go on and on. It's escalated to so many levels of police stopping somebody in a car. And I could do story after story of that, and we know where it's led to. So that's that white privilege. That's one of the pieces.
I have something along the same lines, but not necessarily related to race.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mine is mainly based on my physical disability. And so like a lot of people will follow me or ask me if I need help or if I need something to be picked up, and I really don't. I know how to ask for help. People think that since I don't really, I wouldn't say necessarily quiet, but I observe my I'm an observer, and I'm an auditory and visual learner. And so I don't really, my responses don't come quickly like people would want them to. And that, I guess, kind of relates in some sort of a way, like Laura was saying, but not towards me.
Exactly. No, that's exactly it. So they see you in one way, and so they're expecting you to behave in a certain way.
Right, yeah.
What you think you should do.
And a great example, I guess, is like when I used to take the bus, you know, I used to be able to step on the bus, and now I can't really take the bus. And so it'd be like, hey, can you lower the ramp? And usually some people are like, they'll give me a face of like, really, you want me to do that, when they don't really see, you know, the hidden disability, and where now mine is very visible.
Right, exactly. So we look at people and we make decisions, and one of our first decisions is through color, ethnicity, color. That's where a lot of the white privilege comes in. The other part is, if you'll look back in our laws and our rules, our founding fathers come from European training, European background. That's why we say European American. Today, Europe is not like we are in terms of our thinking process. It's very different. But it's coming back from Descartes, and I think, therefore I am. He was one of the ones who trained, I'm saying this very loosely, so please forgive me, but you know, Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, the founding fathers, and they wrote our Constitution, and our laws that come from all that are through the power of property owners. And who were property owners at that time? White males. So the power comes from, and the status quo now comes from, the power of white males, white females who allow the white males to be power. And the status quo is out there to maintain that system. And we've been maintaining that system either through not being aware and living in a transparent system of that system, or through actually keeping it that way. Some people are like that. So thinking of that, I feel like we as a collective group at Covenant are in several stages of awareness of white privilege. One might be, for some of us, this might be the first time we've really been faced with it, between the protests that came out again about George Floyd and all the different things that are happening, and it's just in our face now, and we really see it for the racism that it is. We might be in just an awareness stage. It might just be coming up for us, and that's okay. That is a good place to be. It also might be that you've been aware of this for a long time, and now you're in a state where you say, we've got to do something, we've got to make a change. One of the places that I feel like many of us live in is a stage of guilt, of feeling guilty about this, feeling guilty about our privilege, feeling guilty for what you've had, either if you weren't aware of it and you just used it. Like Jim saying, he said the word flesh color rather than saying peach color, or I don't know, something like that, and feeling guilty about it. And one of the things I feel Laura has done a super job of in taking us through this process, and Laura, we really do appreciate what you've been doing, but you're taking us through a way to move through the guilt, and then to say, okay, we have power and we have privilege. In what ways will we use that power and privilege? And I think that's the place that we're sitting as a group, as a church. We have a lot of power. This group that we have in this church, the intellectual power, the financial power, ways to
Voice power.
Say it again.
Voices.
Our voices. We have a lot of ways that we can react to the privilege and power that's out there. And it's one of our choices of how we will use it. And one of our choices that we can work through, I think, is working through the guilt. Yes, it happens. Yes, it's out there. Yes, we're a part of the system. But we don't have to be guilty for being white. We don't have to be guilty for having some of the privilege. And we don't all have all the same privileges. And we all have many experiences. Lori, you want to say something?
I hate to interrupt you, but we have at most 5 minutes, and the problem is our Zoom capacity won't handle multiple meetings.
I'm
So
on it. I'm on
Okay.
it. So thank you for cutting me off because I'm getting a little passionate. So what I want to do is just give you a second to tell me some things, tell me some words that you're feeling right now as I'm talking about some of these very powerful ideas of power, privilege, white privilege, guilt, strengths. What are some words that come up for you? And as we start to close this time together.
Working on it.
Working on it. An awareness. We're at an awareness level that a new awareness. It keeps moving forward for me. I keep thinking, oh, I've done the work. And then I've discovered some more work I need to do.
Linda says compassion.
Say it.
Linda says compassion.
Compassion. Compassion for ourselves, each other, and for our world around us, that community around us. Yes, thank you, Linda. Others.
Opportunity and responsibility.
Opportunity and responsibility. Thank you. We have a lot of opportunities. We have lots of ways, even in this time of being alone together, we have ways to share. Other words.
Thinking about, go ahead.
Okay, we got two going. So Bill, you go ahead and go, and then we'll pick up the other one. Go, Bill.
When I heard awareness, and it gets covered, I think, but I was thinking acknowledgement. Just acknowledge, not just being aware, but also acknowledging that I have had these problems, or I may have the. I'm not. I'm trying to deal with this. I reckon letting people know, or making, saying this is a problem. It's a problem I have had, or I have, and I'm working on it.
So in the sociocultural theory, we say naming it. We name it.
Being present for one another.
Being present. So our time is up, and they're going to cut us off in just a minute. Never been cut off like that, Laura, before.
I didn't know it was going to end your meeting, so I do apologize. It was me. I did it, and I was trying to open the Zoom for coffee time, and I didn't know it would.
I'm kidding. Let's take a moment again and just close with the prayer I read to you earlier. So just take a deep breath and put your hands over your heart if that makes you feel comfortable. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable, and let me read. Speak the language of the unheard. Write the racial narrative. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. We all breathe the same air, one vast holy communion of breath. Respire, conspire, inspire. Breathe in peace. Breathe out love. And as we go through this week, thank you for the time you gave. Find ways that you can show compassion. Find ways that you can become more aware and name things that are important to you. Thank you, guys.